Hello students, today we are going to learn about styles of dyeing like resist dyeing, discharge dyeing involving various dyed effects. Coming to the objectives, to understand different styles of dyeing like resist and discharge dyeing methods, and to know about the techniques of resist dyeing in detail, and to acquire knowledge about different types of ickets. Dyeing and printing came into existence in ancient times. There is mention of printed fabric in India about 320 BC. India was the first to develop red and blue color with madder and indigo respectively. Depending on the color effects desired, fiber, yarn and fabric or sewn products are dyed in various styles. Piece dyeing of the fabric usually produces solid colors and costs less to dye fabric than to dye loose fibers or yarns. There are different styles of dyeing which are called direct dyes, discharge dyes, resist dyes and jet dyes, etc. Resist dyeing is done on fabric in which color is prevented from entering the fabric. Batik, tie and dye and ikat are such methods. In discharge dyeing, the design is made by removing the color from the fabric. Resist dyeing or resist prints are very interesting colors and design effects on fabric. These are practiced in various places in India and around the world. These are piece dyed fabric in which color is prevented from entering into the fabric. Resist dyeing is a term for a number of traditional methods of dyeing textiles with patterns. Different methods are used to resist or prevent the dye from reaching all the cloth, thereby creating a pattern and a ground. Coming to the resist dyeing like batik, it is a resist dyeing process in which the designs are made with wax on the fabric which is subsequently immersed in the dye to absorb the color onto the unwaxed portion is known as batik dyeing. It is perfected by the Japanese, and as a tradition, batik is followed in many countries like Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, India, Bangladesh and Sri Lanka. Batik of Indonesia has a long history with diverse patterns, techniques and quality of workmanship. It has been done in Orient and to some extent in Japan. In India, Japan, China, Egypt and Indonesia, wax serves as a resist substance. In Africa, cassava, starch, rice paste and mud serves as a resist material instead of beeswax. Batik is another form of resist dyeing which produces patterns like those in prints. Coming to the method of batik, fabric used for batik should be smooth and thin in order to get a good effect. Silk, soft cottons and organdy are the best preferred fabrics for batik. Heavy, coarse and thick fabrics are not much used. Fabrics for batik must undergo thorough scoring process before using. Dyes will not be absorbed properly if the fabric is not clean. Before tracing of designs onto the fabric must be ironed well. Then the design is transferred onto the fabric very lightly with a sharp pencil, and beeswax is the best wax to use for the batik work. Resin can be added to give crackle effect to wax in the proportions of 1:4. Brushes of various sizes are required to apply wax onto the design of the fabric. There are two methods of applying wax onto the fabric. First one is hand drawn batik. A jant is an instrument made from a small copper reservoir with a spout on a wooden handle. The reservoir holds the resisting material or wax, and the wax flows through spout creating designs as it moves. Coming to the second method, block printing batik. The second method is by using jap, which is a copper block stamp that reflects wooden blocks used for block printing. For intricate designs, jap is used, whereas jant is used for elaborate and artistic designs. One can even use brushes of different sizes in order to obtain the required designs. The technically more difficult and more artistic designs are drawn by hand. Most of the patterns used for batik are generally in geometric, floral, bird and animal motifs. The application of wax must be done on both sides of the fabric. The wax to be applied on the cloth has to be hot so that this liquid goes or gets soaked into the cloth. After each application of wax, the fabric is first immersed in cold water and then dipped in dye bath to obtain a particular color. The portion of the fabric that is not covered by the wax will absorb the dye and the rest of the cloth serves as a resist. After the dye has been fixed and the material is dried, the cloth is boiled and rinsed in hot water to remove the wax. This process of waxing and dyeing can be repeated many times to obtain colorful designs. Coming to the tools used for batik, a small instrument made of short, straight reed handle to which a small funnel shaped copper cup with one or more spouts is attached is called jant. The jant is refilled by hot liquid wax. The worker blows into the spout to eliminate any blockages and allow the wax to flow. The faster method of designing is done with jap, a pattern made of fine copper strips soldered together. The jap is pressed on a pad of cloth saturated with liquid wax. The wax is picked up by the stamp and is applied to the cloth. Materials and dyes suitable for batik. Various fabrics are used including cotton, rayon, linen, voile and silk with higher thread count so that the intricate design qualities of the batik can be maintained. The cloth that is used for batik is washed and boiled in water many times prior to application of wax so that all traces of starches, lime, chalk and other sizing materials are removed from the fabric. Naphthol dyes are best suitable for batik. Different kinds and qualities of wax can be used for batik, and common waxes used for batik consists of mixture of bee wax used for its pliability and paraffin used for friability, and resins can be added to increase adhesiveness. Coming to the characteristics of batik fabrics, a typical batik is characterized by crackled design with no precise outlines. The crackled effect gives a delicate cobweb lines on the designs. Coming to the next resist dyeing method, tie and dye. Tie and dye, this is a resist method of dyeing in which substrate in the form of yarns, fabric is tied with special thread and rubber band to resist dye from penetrating onto the tied areas. The process of tie and dye typically consists of folding, twisting, pleating or crumpling fabrics or garment and binding with strings or rubber bands followed by application of dye. The technique of tying the fabric before dyeing is called resisting, and this resisting would prevent the fabric from being colored. Coming to the method of tie and dye, the result of tie and dye are sometimes similar in appearance to that of batik, but the designs are made differently. Tie and dye was practiced as far as 16th century in India, especially in Rajasthan and Gujarat. Both new as well as used materials can be given a new look by means of applying fresh colors and designs. In case of new materials, the fabric is prepared by scouring and ironing. Then the fabric is folded or bundled in desired form, and the folds or bundles are one of the main components in creating unique tie and dye patterns. Each fold creates a line in the pattern. Creasing and folding the fabric creates geometrical patterns and stripes. Crumbling or twisting the fabric creates more of spirals, while securing the band or thread used for resisting should be tied tight so that no dye enters into the resist area. The other main component of creating unique tie and dye designs is choosing the right color. Different color dyes applied close to each other will mix together and create a new color. So, here the technique of tie and dye, the first technique is tiny dots. This is also called as bandhani. Most of the bandhani making centers are situated in Gujarat, Rajasthan, Sindh, Punjab regions and in Tamil Nadu. In Tamil Nadu, it is known as Sungudi. For making tiny knots or tiny dots design is marked first in the form of small dots or circles in the desired place on the fabric. Each small dot of the design is picked with the 2 fingers or nails. The picked portion of the fabric should be narrow and threads are wound round the picked portion of the dot many times. Picking is done in a little area to have tiny dots when dyed. After completing winding of whole dots of the design, dyeing is carried out. The area where the thread is wounded is resisted, leaving the rest of the fabric colored. Tying is done either with a continuous thread or thread is cut after each spot is tied. The thread to tie dots should always be in white color. For example, to obtain a mango design, draw a dotted mango design on a fabric. The distance between the dots may be as desired but should not exceed 3/4 inch. The lesser the distance between the dots, the better the effect will be. Pick each dot with the help of your fingers or fingernails as already mentioned earlier and knot the area with thread. Coming to the squares design, the fabric is folded 4 to 8 layers. The folded fabric is picked from the center and the folds are folded firmly and the thread is winded from the edge of the circle. The area where the thread is winded resists the dye. Coming to the next technique, tritic technique. For any design, the design is drawn on the fabric first. By taking needle and thread, tiny running stitches are made along the traced outline of the design. After completing of running stitch with a continuous thread from the start of the design till the end, the thread is pulled tightly and is fastened tightly. Coming to the marbling. Marbling is a technique in which the fabric is crumpled and bundled before dyeing. The fabric is laid flat first and the fabric is scrunched together with fingers continuously until all the fabric is scrunched in crumpled or bundled form. Then this crumpled or bundle is secured tightly with bands or threads. Coming to the next technique, knotting technique. Here fabric is laid flat first and center of the fabric is lifted and a knot is tied at the center of the fabric, and knot can also be made at all the 4 corners of the fabric. Here there is no requisite of any resist material and the knot itself acts as a resisting material. Knot can even be made at equal distances after folding the fabric. Vertical or horizontal knots can also be made at equal distances. Coming to the stripe design or pleating. Stripes can be obtained in 3 ways, that is diagonal, vertical and horizontal. They are obtained by tying up the whole width of the fabric or form one corner to the another corner in diagonal direction or vertical direction or horizontal direction. Vertical stripes are made by pleating the whole width of the fabric from selvage edge to selvage edge. This may be tied at intervals with separate threads, starting from one end of the corner to the other end of the corner, leaving a distance of ½ inch, while tying gaps should be avoided. For diagonal stripes, the pleating should be in diagonal direction. In this, the diagonal corner will meet. And for horizontal stripes, pleat the fabric on lengthwise and tying is followed. It is impossible to get a perfect level stripes due to gathering of the fabric, but regularity in pleating will enhance this effect. Coming to the spiral designs, to obtain a circular design, lay the fabric flat on the table, hold the material from the center like an umbrella, tie at different places depending upon the designs. Always use a white or any pastel colored fabric to get effective results. To obtain three colors, namely white, yellow and red, first dye in yellow color so that the tied portion will remain white. In case if yellow dots were also preferred along with the white dots, then dye at few more places and dye the fabric in red color at last. So, here the light color is followed by the dark color dyeing. The process is repeated as many times as desired, making new knots in another part of the fabric and immersing the fabric in added dye baths. This gives a characteristic blurred or mottled effect. Tied portions are then opened. Coming to the next technique, Shibori technique. The fabric is laid flat first and the fabric is then rolled around the tube. The fabric is scrunched at both the ends towards the center. Then the fabric is secured tightly with the help of rubber bands. Coming to the next technique, object resist tying. In this technique, any object like stones, clips, pins are used for resisting material. Here, the fabric is laid flat and design is traced onto the fabric. According to the design, stones of equal size are selected and tied with twine thread or rubber band following equal distances. In another technique, simple clips or pins are used as resisting material. For this, fold the fabric 4 to 5 times and place these clips or pins at the edge of the fold, and the sample is dyed and the pins can be removed after dyeing. Here, pins or clips acts as a resisting material. Coming to the materials and tools used for resist tie and dye techniques. Materials suitable for tie and dye are georgette, lawn, cambric, poplin, khadar, silk, nylon and malmal. Tools used for tie and dye are simple clips, pins or any kind of stones, bands and twine threads. Dyes suitable for tie and dye are any kind of dyes best suits this purpose like wad dyes, naphthol dyes, acid dyes, direct dyes, reactive dyes, sulfur dyes and any kind of natural dyes can be used for this tie and dye techniques. Coming to the characteristics of tie and dye. These tie and dye samples are characterized by use of bright saturated primary colors and bold patterns. And these samples are characterized by white spaces between bold colors. Coming to the next technique, discharge dyeing. Discharging is the process of removing dye by destroying or altering the dye chromophores with various chemicals or bleaches, often in pleasing colors or patterns through shibori or tie and dye methods or by stamping, stenciling or block printing methods. Discharging removes the color from fabric and is opposite of dyeing. This process is used to create natural or controlled patterns in textiles. Other common names are bleaching or resisting. It is known to bring dark color fibers lighter. Discharge dyeing are fabrics which are dyed prior to printing. Many pleasing effects can be obtained by producing colored patterns on colored fabrics or by producing a white pattern on a colored background or colored fabric. Discharge prints or dyes are prints that have dark background, widely spaced motifs and a rich, vibrant and expansive look. For the fabric to be dyed, the fabric is first piece dyed. A discharge paste which contains chemicals to remove the color on the fabric is then applied to fabric with rollers. The discharge paste contains a chemical called sulfoxylate formaldehyde, discharging agent capable of attacking the dye locally. This chemical is capable of reducing the dye in the fabric, causing the dye to lose its ability to selectively absorb and reflect light, so that finally it shows a white or light pattern on a colored background. A second dye resistant to the discharge agent can be incorporated in the paste, so that the cloth printed with it yields two color pattern. A great disadvantage of discharge printing is that a white or colored pattern can be produced on dyed backgrounds. It enables production of colored blotches with sharp outlines, generally difficult to obtain by direct styles. This process produces almost the same white or colored discharge effect on both sides of the cloth, so that it becomes difficult to distinguish the printed side from the other. The limitations of discharge type of printing is that only those colors which can be discharged have to be used, since all colors are not dischargeable. One class of the dyes, wet dyes, are not affected by the colors destroying chemicals. Discharging is often done to fix dyeing mistakes. Coming to the identification of discharge printed fabrics, identification of discharge print is usually accomplished by inspecting the back of the fabric for small specks of background color used under the design motif. Specks are the results of the incomplete removal of background color by reducing agents. Discharge prints can be made with roller and screen methods, but not by heat transfer printing. A fabric is said to be of discharge print only if the background color is same on face and back of the fabric, and the print design area is of white or different color or shade than that of the background. Motifs of discharge prints may range from simple polka dots to very intricate patterns. Coming to the next topic, ikkuts. Ikkut is an ancient art or form of resist printing. In ikkut, the yarn is tied for dyeing and weaving. In ikkut, only warp yarns or only filling yarns or both set of yarns are colored before weaving. Ikkut designs typically do not have precise edges. Ikkuts require great skill in determining the placement of the design in the finished fabric. The term ikkut comes from the Malay word mangikat, meaning tie or bind. This refers to tie dyeing method used to give these fabrics their unique vibrancy of color and designs. In India, Patola, Odisha and Pochampalli textiles use ikkut or yarn tie and dye resist technique to produce beautiful saris and other fabrics. Coming to the different types of ikkuts, single ikkut. Single ikkut is a process of dyeing only warp yarns or weft yarns before weaving. Here, only one set of yarns, either warp or weft, are resist dyed according to the design. Coming to the warp ikkuts, in warp ikkut, it is only the warp yarns that are dyed using the ikkut technique. The weft yarns are dyed with solid color and the ikkut pattern is clearly visible in the warp yarns wound onto the loom even before the weft is woven into. Weft ikkuts. In weft ikkuts, it is weaving or weft yarns that carries the dye patterns. Therefore, the pattern only appears as the weaving proceeds. Weft ikkuts are much slower to weave than warp ikkuts because weft yarns must be carefully adjusted after each passing of the shuttle to maintain clarity of the design. Coming to the next type of ikkuts, double ikkuts. In double ikkuts, this is a technique in which both warp and weft yarns are resist dyed prior to weaving. Double ikkuts are most difficult to make and are most expensive than single ikkuts. Double ikkut is only produced in 3 countries like India, Japan and Indonesia. The double ikkut made in Patan, Gujarat in India is most complicated, called as patola. It is made using fine silk yarns and in many colors. It may be patterned with a small motif that is repeated many times across the length of 6 meters of sari. Sometimes the pattern double ikat is pictorial with no repeats across its length. That is, each small design element in each color was individually tied in the warp and weft yarns. Coming to the production of ikats, the desired pattern is first drawn on the warp and weft yarns by hand. The master weaver ties bundles of warp or weft threads in precise patterns to prepare for dyeing. The threads are then dyed in a specific color so that the color seeps into the yarns at an appropriate position. A more intricate resist dyeing technique must accurately match with the planned fabric design. The next step after resist dyeing of warp yarns is securing the dyed warp threads to the loom and checking for accuracy. The other set of yarns, either warp or weft, are solid dyed. Then the weaver weaves the weft thread through and the fabric design emerges. Double ikat textiles involves more skill than single ikats. For these, the weaver dyes and bundles threads of weft according to pattern. He then weaves the weft and warp to cross precisely so that colors match up and form the planned motif. These ikats are rich in color. Coming to the characteristics of ikats, because of the handcrafted weaving process, ikats have distinctive feathered edge on the colored areas. From distance, no motif is exactly the same. From a distance, the textiles has an organic quality that printed version cannot duplicate. Today, we have learned about styles of dyeing, resist, discharge involving various dyed effects. Thank you.